My maiden voyage with the bells. Yeah. All right, here we go.
I believe in mindfulness. I believe that we can experience sacredness, holiness, every minute of every hour of every day if we just pay attention. This is called Witness the Miracle. Once in a lifetime. You may see the spark of a firefly through your window, glowing in the dark for a moment, then it's gone. Such a tiny light. Witness the miracle, an instant of delight, knowing you are not alone. Once in a lifetime. You may hear the cry of a solitary eagle circling in the sky far above the forest floor. Such a lonely sound. Witness the miracle, anchored to the ground, yet your spirit yearns to soar. These connections bring us hope, direction, and a reason to be here. Spirits drawn to life outside us, in this world so fragile and so dear. You may breathe the plume of a hearth fire as you wander, downcast in the gloom, collar turned against the storm. Such a friendly ember, witness the miracle, smiling you'll remember being safe and snug and warm. Once in a lifetime. You may taste the tears of a child who is hurting, like some shipwrecked sailor spent and gasping on the shore. Such a human flavor. Witness the miracle, as the love you gave her is returned forevermore. These connections bring us hope, direction, and a reason to be here. Spirits drawn to life outside us, in this world so fragile and so dear. You may touch the hearts of so many without knowing, every deed a seed growing after you've moved on. Such a timeless story. Witness the miracle, like the morning glory unfolding in the dawn. Once in a lifetime. Every living thing is a miracle in progress. Every day's a gift. Use it wisely and you'll see, deep in every soul, the universe is singing. Mindful moments bring us closer to sweet harmony. These connections give us hope, direction, and a reason to be here. Spirits drawn to life outside us, in this world so fragile and so dear. These connections bring us hope, direction, and a reason to be here. Spirits drawn to life outside us, in this world so fragile and so dear. You may see the spark of a firefly through your window, glowing in the dark for a moment, then it's gone.
We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. We're going to hold off on our unison affirmation because we decided it would work better a little later in our service. So Kath von Prague will join us for our welcome and announcements.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, my fearless snow-going friends, to the First Parish in Bedford, gathered in love and service for justice and peace. Come into our house of hope and love, of peace and justice, of wholeness and healing. We welcome the certain and the seeking, the long-time members and the newcomers, the joyful and the fearful, all of whom are loved, all of whom belong. Life is richer, deeper, and more gratifying when we live it together. Whoever you are, wherever you were born, whoever you love, whatever body you live in, welcome. My name is Catherine Van Prague, and I am the president of the First Parish Board. Today, we're looking forward to a lay-led service, which is something we have a long tradition of here at First Parish. Although we are not having our usual Candles of Joy and Sorrows this Sunday, Nancy Doherty from the Lay Pastoral Care Team will be by the candle stand after the service for anyone who wishes to light a private candle. Also, as on previous Sundays, we will light one candle for Maria, our guest in sanctuary, and for all of the immigrants and their families who live in fear and hope. Following the service, please join us for fellowship and coffee. You've earned it coming out here today in the common room. If you are new to First Parish, please stop by the welcome table on your way in there and introduce us to yourself. You can also fill out one of the blue connection cards in the pew, and we can stay in touch with you after the service. At 11:30 p.m., there'll be a discussion of the service up in the bacon room that you're welcome to join us for. Huh? Did I say p.m.? I'm ready for bed already. In the back of your order of service, you will find the announcements. There are just a few quick ones I'd like to make now. Mystery Friends sign-up are happening during Community Hour. This is a great opportunity for adults and kids in the church to get to know each other. After being paired up by the Lay Pastoral Care Team, you will be exchanging letters between yourself and your mystery friend for a few weeks, and then we have a big breakfast before service where you all get to do the big reveal and find out who your mystery friend is. So I encourage folks to sign up. Also, if you are, will be, or have ever been a child or an adult, a parent, a teacher, or a student, the RE committee is asking for you to give your input on their RE questionnaire. It's available both online, and there are also paper forms that are going to be available during Community Hour. You can stop by their table and get more information. The RE committee's worked really hard on this, and the board is 100% behind hearing from everybody in the community. So at this point, the kids who would like to go to the common room and join in some kids' activities are welcome to go. And are we singing? Okay.
I'd like to ask you to rise in body, spirit, and join in singing hymn number 113, Where is Our Holy Church? It's a shame the children have left and they can't see me magically become 6 inches taller. It's amazing, though, isn't it? Good morning. I'm Nan Jeffries, a member of the congregation, and it's a great pleasure for me to host today's service on the subject of This I Believe. Today we're going to hear from several members of the congregation. I thank them very much for raising their hands and offering to spend some significant time and effort thinking about what it is that they believe, and they will be sharing those statements of faith with us this morning. Several years ago, running through the airport from one flight to another, someone flashed past me wearing a T-shirt with this motto emblazoned on the front. It read, "I believe that everyone has the right to my opinion." As Unitarian Universalists, we certainly do believe that everyone is entitled to our opinion. On a deeper level, though, we believe in the authenticity of self, of the soft, still voice that tells us that we each know inherently what is true and what is right. We respect these individual voices even when they differ from our own. And that is the unique strength and beauty and durability of our faith tradition. When I was a little girl, my father liked to play the game of see the church, see the steeple. You look inside and you see all the people. It has always been a source of tremendous strength and solace for me to come to church, to see all the people, and to hear from others who do not share my worldview and whose diversity of belief have offered me new and different ways to interpret the world. And that's been especially true when I've been going through a difficult time. I'm not alone just with what I believe. I can hear from others. Today we have the gift, again, of hearing from several people with different points of view. So I invite you to sit back, relax, breathe deeply, and breathe in the wisdom that comes from our diversity.
This I believe. I believe in revering the dignity of all sentient life, human and non-human animal. Each one of us, whether furry or feathery or scaly, is a miracle of evolution. To come from a protoplasmic goo over millennia and have the ability to feel and think is pretty cool. And each one of us has just this one life, this one perspective, looking out of these neural endings, out of this specific body. Because of this central belief in the dignity of life, I am a cliché, a vegetarian veterinarian. I don't eat animals, since I wouldn't kill one myself to eat it, and I don't want someone else doing the dirty work for me. I aspire to be a true vegan and not use any animal products. My farm rotation in vet school convinced me of that. Grizzled older farm vets turn out to be quite annoyed at young veterinary students weeping in their trucks after farm calls. I remember kneeling over a struggling calf. I was supposed to dehorn her. The dairy industry cores out the horn buds since cows with horns hurt people and hurt each other. My pain-killing nerve block, which I had asked to try despite it not being standard protocol, didn't really work, and the calf cried, as did I. I felt nauseous at a big dairy farm seeing the downer cows, which are cows that can't get up anymore, being old and broken at the end of their work lives, of being walking udders whose babies are taken away at birth. This is the animal suffering cost of milk that's not on the $3.50 price tag. A farm vet in Navajo Nation did try to convince me that super fresh Rocky Mountain oysters he was popping into Tupperware straight from the nether regions of a bucking young bulls in the squeeze chute were suitable for vegetarians, since the animal is going to live for now. I wrestle with knowing the realities of animal farming whether factory farming or a smaller business, as business needs profit to survive. Animal welfare and maximizing profit don't mix. And one way to keep my conscience clean would be to completely stop eating dairy and eggs as well as meat. But I don't always live consistently with my beliefs. The cheese case at Whole Foods leads me into temptation, Bedford Farms. Also, I'm reluctant to impose on friends and be an even more difficult dinner guest. We could all go pioneer, but our family doesn't have space for a cow, and my husband, being probably the only rational one, is resisting adding happy free-range chickens to our menagerie of a dog, 2 cats, 2 guinea pigs, 1 rabbit, and a bearded lizard dragon. As a small animal veterinarian, my job is to help pets live their best lives with dignity and to reduce animal suffering, which is part of a veterinarian's oath. I try to help furry creatures and their humans live harmoniously together. I pour my heart and soul and brains, bought with hundreds of thousands of dollars of education, into helping my patients and their families. There's an evolving language shift from owner to pet parent, and the companion animal side of the veterinary profession doesn't put a price on a pet. When I was in vet school, a feeder goldfish was getting radiation therapy for a sarcoma tumor. $2,000 dental procedures for a painful rotting dog mouth are routine, and I recently did surgery to remove a tumor on a parishioner's gerbil, just a gerbil, but now healthy and pain-free. My greatest challenge is when I can't help or relieve my patient, either because of medical limitations, financial limitations, or non-compliance. Sometimes cats and dogs don't want to take pills. Sometimes the human doesn't trust me or want to make the effort or spend the money, and they don't have pet health insurance. There can be an awkward triangle of competing interests between patient, doctor, and client. I also use my medical skills to end life when there is suffering that I can't help. Euthanasia comes from eu, which is good, and thanatos, which means death in Greek. The family and I ideally have an ongoing honest discussion about palliative care options. I lost myself. I don't know where I am. Hold on. The nursing care that is needed and what we think the pet is feeling and would want. Animals aren't intellectual to experience a fear of death, but they do fear pain and feeling sick. I think animal suffering is worse than ours in some ways, since they can't think about past and future and can't put their pain into a context of a life well lived. When a pet is too painful, too decrepit, and tired to find pleasure in life anymore, it is a gift to be able to give relief and gently send the soul on to a better place. As I sedate them and then inject the overdose of anesthetic medication, I gently say what a good boy or girl he or she was. I stroke the fur, and I am fully present with them until their spirit is not there anymore. This dignity at the end of life is what I would ask for myself, but it still takes a bite out of my own soul every time. And then I try to console the pet parent, and sometimes I cry as well, because I appreciate the pain in that human soul as well. And mourning together is a bond that brings dignity even to red eyes and runny noses. Thank you.
Well, gee, I need a minute after that one. Well, some of y'all might know this and some of y'all don't, but I grew up in this church. Right around when I was 12 and my brother was 9, my parents looked at us, about to hit our teenage years, and said, well, we're definitely going to need a village to raise these kids, and so it was that we joined First Parish Bedford. I grew up here in Bedford and in this church, and looking back, I was so lucky to be able to take what love means completely for granted. My family, all of it, not just my immediate family, is very physically affectionate, very open about sharing words of love and backing up those words with deeds. And my extended family, which is legion, they would fill this whole church, they're like a giant love amoeba. They just suck people in. For years, my husband was annoyed that I didn't introduce him to people at family parties because, I know the name of my great aunt's priest or my dad's mother's brother's wife's mother's daughter's son. His name is Joe, but that's not the point. And they do things like open their houses for absolutely enormous family Christmas parties, for wedding receptions and graduation parties. My cousin gave me a car when I graduated from college. My aunt loaned me money to buy my house. And I know there's more, but they don't even talk about it, they just do it. They're crazy and loud, and they can hold a grudge forever. But they'll welcome you into their homes, they'll kiss you, they'll feed you, and they will never, ever let you down. So that's what I grew up with, and I never knew anything else. Off I went to college, and one day my dear friend Maggie invited me to co-host her radio show with her. It was Valentine's Day 2004, and I was 20. Maggie queued up the Beatles' All You Need Is Love, and I'll never forget this. She turned to me and she said, "Do you think it's true, Cassie, that all you need is love?" And I said, "Of course not, don't be ridiculous. You've got to eat, you've got to earn, you've got to have a roof over your head." And Maggie just looked at me like, "Well, you haven't got a romantic bone in your body because I really don't think that's the point of the song." Now, I don't think it will come as a shock to anyone here that a sophomore in college doesn't actually know anything about anything. That was 14 years ago, almost to the day, and I always think about it at this time of year and laugh a little at what little I knew. In those 14 years, I've learned a lot about love, what it gives, what it takes, how it can break your heart and make you a better person. Join me now in the present day and imagine this scene. I have a dog. His name is Hector. He's 55 pounds, and he's very sweet, but he's very big. He's not yet 2 years old, so he's still a puppy in many ways. And as dogs do, he likes to chase the cat, whose name is Cleo. This is supremely unfair to the cat, who, it must be noted, was here first. And personally, I find it super stressful to live in a constant state of conflict, so I'm working with them on learning to get along. Lately, this has meant Cleo getting as close to Hector as she possibly can, and then smacking him when he tries to sniff her. The cat is a jerk. We can achieve a cessation of aggression, but only so long as I am actively petting both of them. So as I'm sitting there, petting both of them, I explain to them, not that they're listening, but I'm trying to explain to them, that I have plenty of love to go around. Just because I'm snuggling Cleo does not mean I love Hector any less. Love is not finite, I tell them. It's not like a jug of milk that decreases with use and needs to be replenished. It's just there, an endless well of love. But it does ebb and flow. There's a lot of things they say about love, that it is patient and kind and gentle and blah, blah, blah. And it is all of those things. But no one tells you how hard it can be, that sometimes it is really hard to love. Because it does come with responsibilities, like making sure the cat doesn't spend the rest of her life being chased by the dog. Love has no limits, but loving can still take an awful lot out of you. Sometimes you don't even really like the people you love, but you love anyway. And sometimes love isn't enough, but that's a whole other essay altogether. When I told Maggie that you certainly need more than love, I was thinking of the endless commitments, responsibilities, chores, tasks, all the little things that need to be done to ensure that we live through another day. And when I was 20 years old, with such a strong and loving foundation behind me, I didn't know that getting through is not enough, which, ironically, if you are not a self-absorbed 20-year-old and you actually listen to the lyrics of All You Need Is Love, is exactly what the Beatles were saying. Even if you check 15 things off your to-do list, a day without love is a day wasted. And that is a strong admission from a born pragmatist, by the way. Love is love, and it has endless variables and presentations. There's romantic love, of course. There's love of and for family, the ones we were born into and the ones we find. There's love of and for our friends, the families we build. And there's even love for one hyperactive puppy and one exceedingly rude cat. So in the end, this I have learned, and this I believe. Those great sages of the 60s were right. All you need is love, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. In the end, it truly is the only thing in this world that we cannot live without.
You know, it really is nice being able to see right in front of you. So we have our little box here to help out people who are somewhat challenged in the height department. I'd like to ask you to join me in the responsive reading number 657, It Matters What We Believe. Some beliefs are like walled gardens. They encourage exclusiveness and the feeling of being especially privileged.
Other beliefs are expansive and lead the way to wider and deeper sympathy.
Some beliefs are like shadows, clouding children's days with fears of unknown calamities.
Other beliefs are like sunshine, blessing children with the warmth of happiness.
Some beliefs are divisive, separating the saved from the unsaved, friends from enemies.
Other beliefs are bonds in the world community, where sincere differences unify the pattern.
Some beliefs are like blinders, shutting off the power to choose one's own direction.
Other beliefs are like gateways, opening wide vistas for exploration.
Some beliefs weaken a person's selfhood. They blight the growth of resourcefulness.
Other beliefs nurture self-confidence and enrich the feeling of personal worth.
Some beliefs are rigid, like the body of death, impotent in a changing world.
Other beliefs are pliable, like the unsapling, ever growing with the outward thrust of life.
The next part of our service is the offertory. And when I was looking at what my responsibilities were, I realized that as a professional fundraiser and fundraising consultant, that I just couldn't bear to ask anyone for money on my day off. You know, I get to do this all week long. Sunday, I can't handle it. And then I realized, well, I don't have to worry about that because we've got Don Marshall. And thankfully, Don agreed to my request that he do the offertory. Don?
I have a book at home that was published in 1925, and the title of it is very unpretentious. It's called The Complete Book of Limericks. So what you're about to hear was not in that book, and I don't believe that it will be in any republishing of that book if it ever takes place. The church. There once was a church in the boonies, which some thought was a haven for loonies. But beneath that tall steeple were some wonderful people, though they danced to many different tunies. The good works of that church are ongoing, and new initiatives are constantly showing. So let's face it, honey, that takes real money. So it's time for some spectacular bestowing. So the collection for the good works of this church will now be taken. Thank you.
I too believe in the individual human spirit. You may have heard the phrase, illegitimi non carborundum, which is pseudo-Latin for don't let the bastards wear you down. Or as Sting once put it in his little essay, An Englishman in New York, be yourself, no matter what they say. This is called What We Want to Be. Come and walk beside me for a while, and I will sing a song to make you smile. You and I be what we want to be. Come and rest beside me now and then, and you can share your dreams with me, my friend. You and I can climb the mountains, you and I can swim the sea, you and I can be what we want to be, what we want to be. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. You and I can climb the mountains, you and I can swim the sea, you and I can be what we want to be. Lots of people call us crazy fools, but I just have to laugh at all their rules. Because you and I can swim the mountains, you and I can climb the sea, you and I can be what we want to be. That's right. You and I can climb the mountains, you and I can swim the sea, you and I can be what we want to be. Yeah, what we want to be. Free. Na 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 na. Sing it with me. Na 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 na. A little bit louder. Na 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 na. Gorgeous. Keep it up.
I believe in God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, who was born of the Virgin Mary, suffered unto Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead, and buried. And the third day, according to the Scriptures, he rose to heaven, whence he shall sitteth on the right hand of God, and judge both the quick and the dead, and so on. Was anybody following along with any of that? That's the Apostles' Creed. And back when we had apostles, that was pretty good for unifying people, so you're all going in the same direction. It was good for getting people moving along. But in my youth, I found that was part of my religious education. It was a big part of my religious education, what I was supposed to believe. Liturgy in a book of common prayer, stuff we had to say every Sunday, or bad things would happen. The Episcopal Church requires a repetition of an awful lot of pledges and prayers. We did it every Sunday, and eventually I had memorized the entire Apostles' Creed. Maybe you have too. In our church, there was a guy who had it memorized, and he took pride in being able to stand up with his eyes closed and say the entire Apostles' Creed. But I, as a wise guy, that I still am, tried to race him to the very end to see who could get there first. And I figured somehow we got some chips in heaven that would make us better people. Well, I was a regular at church when I was a kid. Frankly, it was a way to get out of the house. But one Sunday, and I must have been like a sophomore or a junior in high school, I recited this liturgy as an usher, and I went through the entire complete service, but I didn't remember at the end of the service what had gone on. Not a darn thing. The only thing I remembered was that I got a good, accurate count of how many people were there. I was an usher, you see. The whole purpose of being in church suddenly lost its meaning. It certainly didn't have anything to do with counting how many people were there. Well, once you start thinking along those lines, it gets to be a very, very slippery slope. You pull one thread of the sweater, and pretty soon you're back to yarn. So first I let go of the idea that there's actually a purpose for me being on earth, some part of a divine plan, some notion that somebody's watching out for me and figuring out who's naughty and who's nice. Well, that's a lot of moving parts for somebody to take care of. And I figured in the days before computers, they didn't know how to do that. Maybe Google does it now, but I'm sure they didn't at that time. Secondly, I had to ditch the whole creed thing as presented by the Anglican Church. It wasn't something I could support. An explanation of the universe that was created by somebody, even somebody as powerful with superpowers. Well, that's a lot for one person to construct. And especially in 7 days. Well, okay, take it as a metaphor. Even that, the notion that somebody figured out how to put things so that there was right, there was wrong, there was evil, there was good, there was salt and there was pepper, there was salt and there was sour. Well, later I discovered a poem by Alexander Pope which contained this clarifying stanza. Nature and nature's mystery lay bathed in night. God said, "Let there be Newton," and there was light. The Age of Enlightenment, a period when people began thinking beyond the box, as we say today, thinking outside the lines. Thirdly, life after death and what happens to us once we stop breathing and living, nobody can know what that is. They really can't. We had this guy, a very famous guy, a couple of thousand years ago. He said he knew. He said his dad told him. But I just don't get it. And finally, and critically, there's a matter of getting into heaven. They just didn't, besides the matter of getting into heaven, this theology just didn't seem to answer many of the modern problems that we had. And especially at 16, I needed some kind of guidance in my life, something that offered a more understandable set of answers, something I could grab a hold of and rely on. Where I was going, what it's all about. Well, I jumped over and transferred to the Congregational Church, not too far from my Episcopal church, but my parents wondered where I went on Sundays. And eventually I told them. The fact that Carol Woodbury and her family were members over there didn't make it any harder for me. And then some years later, I ran into a bunch of Unitarians, or people in the Unitarian Universalist tradition, in the political campaign of a former Peace Corps volunteer. Now, I could identify with a Peace Corps volunteer, but Paul Tsongas was a new kind of person, and the people that backed him were really, really cool. progressive thinkers united by thinking that the simplest thing that they could do was try to do the right thing. Motivated theologically in the whole by the desire to be left the hell alone. Leave me alone with my theology. I'll take care of that business. Meanwhile, we got other stuff to do. Through this coterie, I met more and more members of the particular clubhouse that this gang had. This one right here, where they'd meet on a Sunday, and I began to meet some of the most helpful, kind, non-conforming, generous, committed to social justice, intellectually stimulating, from a variety of religious background that I had ever met. People who were raised Jewish, raised Catholic, raised Episcopalian, raised Baptist, raised nothing. I didn't meet many who were raised Unitarian, and that surprised me a little bit, but I found out later that there's a category for folks like that. They're called backsliding Unitarians. Well, to complete the picture, here in this congregation, this bunch of people figure every once in a while it's a good idea to step back and figure out, what's it all about? What's going on here? What's important to us? Are we just a social group? What are we? And put together through a process called visions and values, and I'm looking here for people who are responsible for that, but there was a committee, really a committee that really got something done. This was a committee that came up with a very, very simple statement of faith. To me, that closed the circle of finding a creed that could replace that which was once offered by the apostles, a bunch of people that got together in Nicaea, Turkey, in 1532. And it suits me right down to the ground. Here's a set of beliefs and morals that I can completely agree with. So please join me in our unison affirmation. If you're new to First Parish, it's okay to read ahead. You don't have to say everything that's in there. It's up to you. Total conformity not required. Your mileage may vary. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to search the truth in love, and to help one another. Did I bit? What? Somebody read ahead? Do we have to do it in Spanish? Boy, I missed this bend in the road. You ready? Keep up. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia. El servicio es su ley. Este es nuestro gran pacto. Vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros. Very well done, gee whiz.
First, let me introduce myself. I'm Bob Loger. I have been a member of this church since 1967. And I'm an immigrant. I was born in The Hague, Holland, and came to the U.S. in June of 1939 at the age of 3.5. Second, I'm an engineer. And third, I'm an atheist. Let me give you some background on my religious upbringing. I was brought up as a Protestant, going to Sunday school, congregational church, and a youth group, even the youth choir. Then I went off to college, MIT, and came back my first spring break and told my mother that I needed to talk with my minister. I told him that I needed to resign from the church because I didn't believe in God. His comment, that doesn't matter. Only 3 years ago, I found out that my parents were Jewish. They had hidden that from me. I can only guess to protect me from persecution. If we had not left Holland when we did, I wouldn't be here today. There were, and still are, significant anti-Semitic feelings in this country as well as elsewhere. With this background, let me say some things about religion. We think of it as a tool to develop moral principles, which can be a very good guide, but only if used well. In 1975, I made a trip to fairly recently independent Algeria, looking for research funding. People there told me that at the time, 40% of the population was under the age of 12. The reason was that the government was trying to increase its population in order to have greater influence in the Muslim world. A few years later, they realized that this religion-based policy was an economic disaster due to unbalanced overpopulation. Several years ago, I read Charles Mann's book entitled 1491, The Americas Before Columbus. This anthropologist went through all of the major civilizations in the Americas, South, Central, and North, and showed how advanced they were culturally with very large populations. They all had religions, but he pointed out that in all cases, the religious leader was the civic leader. Conclusion, religion was used for control, to control the population, to tell them how to think and act, with emphasis on think. Over time, science has been a problem for many religious beliefs. More canons and practices had to be modified or abandoned. In some cases, the science is ignored. When ignored, some followers cannot adjust their thinking, such as on the issue of evolution. Today, many religions around the world are trying to force their ideas on the rest of the world, just like the Crusaders did in the Middle East. Even in the US, they are trying to make the world accept their beliefs. I align my thinking with humanism, an active philosophy from the early 1800s, which someone told me was a forerunner to Unitarianism. Its creed is, if there is a God, it is us. We are all in this together, so we better get along or we are doomed. Charles Mann, in a subsequent book, blamed Columbus for starting globalization, which many of us, I can't say all of us, some recognize is here now. So now I believe that we all need to deal with each other. We are all in this together. The whole world must change its attitude, accept globalization, and the need to respect all people, even if you don't agree with them. And we must work together to save the planet. It is the intelligent way to survive. We need to figure out how to do it.
One of my favorite hymns is the one we'll sing next, number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning.
I believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all of us. 20 years ago, I traveled with a dozen other college students to Peru to learn about liberation theology. We spent a weekend in the Pueblos Jóvenes on the outskirts of Lima. Pueblos Jóvenes, literally translated, means young villages. Practically speaking, they are cities of makeshift homes, patchworked together with whatever materials are available and stretching up the foothills and along the roads out of town as far as we could see. Open ditches littered with trash and damp with sewage lined the paved roads. The smell of burning trash filled our noses, and the sounds of humanity, closely packed, filled our ears. Music blaring, babies crying, chickens squawking, and people hollering. We walked through town wearing travel clothes and sturdy shoes, sunglasses, backpacks, and cameras around our necks. And people stared at us. And it was no wonder they stared. I can't imagine the looks on our faces as we hopped over a ditch or saw a chicken slaughtered in the mercado. We walked past a woman standing behind 2 buckets on a table. She was dunking and scrubbing and wringing out her clothes, then hanging them on a clothesline. She stood in her flip-flops in front of a rust-colored shack with no door. There was a doorway, but there was no door. A blue tarp covered the roof, half of the roof. There were no windows. There were no lights on inside. She smiled at us and we had a short conversation, stifled by our limited Spanish, and she was friendly to us, and someone asked, "Can we take a picture?" She smiled, she blushed, and she looked down at her feet, and subconsciously she lifted her hand to her hair, and she said no, she wasn't presentable enough for a photo. She had that kind of normal human response that I would have had if I found myself living shoulder to shoulder with so many people, and some shiny foreigners came and asked to take my picture. She probably wouldn't have been there but for the impossible choices that she had to make. People founded and populated the Pueblos Jóvenes out of desperation. Whatever they were fleeing from was worse than the shoulder-to-shoulder existence that we witnessed in the outskirts of Lima. I was embarrassed by my voyeurism. I was ashamed that I walked through town viewing these lives through my camera lens, a lens that separated me from the humanity of the situation. I could be her, and she could very easily have been me. Since then, I can't unsee the humanity in people who are living through impossible situations, and there have been many. There are many. Since then, I don't think there's anything about me that makes me more deserving of running water in my home. It's just the fortune of my being born here. Since then, my perspective has shifted so permanently that I thought that most people felt the same. And I realized recently that that's unfortunately not true at all. It's a radical thought to believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all of us. And I thank you for sharing it with me.
When asked to participate today, I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous. I'm still nervous. But I thought, okay, I wrote a credo back in coming of age, I'll just rework that. Well, I reread my credo from 10 years ago, and we're gonna start from scratch. To start off, 10 years ago, I wrote about how I believe in love, friendship, courage, the unexpected treasures of life, and the power of human collaboration, among other things. And while these values still hold true for me today, rather than listing to you all the things I do believe, I'd rather tell you a story about a belief I've learned. I'm 24 years old. Young. I know. I've got my whole life ahead of me, they say, so don't worry so much. Life will figure itself out. These are the things I'm told to believe, but society has conditioned me otherwise. I left high school and I went straight to college because that is exactly what we were taught was normal, the thing to do. I picked a major that I liked, that was interesting. But had I really thought about where it would take me in life? No. It was a path, I was on it, therefore I was fitting the mold. But where was the opportunity for reflection, for the time to understand the impact of my choices? In my senior year of college, it was time to pick that next step. I realized I hadn't really thought about, reflected upon, or even understood all the directions I could go. But that's okay. I've got time, they say. That concept's hard when you come out of college in debt you don't want to talk about, debt you didn't understand when you started college, to feel like you're unsure of what you want, but you're in debt for it, but it's okay. I was asked to speak today to represent the millennials, and I really struggled with what to say. What belief do I truly value? What belief have I learned? So continuing with my story, it's hard to feel unsure and feel like feeling unsure is okay because the path society takes us on makes us feel like we should know. Why would I invest so much time and money in myself to feel unsure? So I took a year off after college, and then I decided to go back to school because I had discovered in my year off something I'd always known about myself. I have a passion for health and nutrition. It's not an interest, it's a passion. And that's where I needed to be in the world. So I went on to graduate school, and I'm finishing this May with my master's. But here's the thing, I'm still unsure. But this time, I'm not unsure of what the field has to offer me. I'm unsure of what impact I want to make, where I want to be in the field. But that's okay. I've got time. But how could I really know honestly when I've only experienced small snippets of potential job prospects through research assistantships, internships, etc.? I know I'm passionate about nutrition. I know I want to help people. But where exactly I want to be, I'm not sure. And again, I'm told it's okay. Life will work itself out. Yet society tells me otherwise. I dread the question, so what's next? While I know it comes from a good place, without having an answer, it feels like you've failed by being unsure or not knowing. I had an interview the other day, and one question the interviewer kept circling back to was, what were my long-term career aspirations? It didn't seem appropriate to say, well, I'm not sure. So instead I said, well, I'm interested in working with people and I think this position could really help me grow. But that didn't answer the question. So he asked again, great, but what are your long-term career goals? And I said to him, I don't know. I'm not sure if down the road I'll want further education or if I'll want to be more embedded in the community. I'm hoping this job will help identify that for me. It didn't feel okay to be unsure during this interview. So now I've told you a long, sad millennial story that I'm sure some of you relate to, and perhaps others are saying, no, it really will be okay. I'm here to say, I believe you. I do believe that life will take me where I need to go, but someone needs to tell the rest of the world. Feeling unsure is so hard when society puts you on this path that you pay for. But the moral of this story is reflection. I believe in the value of reflection. I believe reflection fosters confidence, clarity, and an understanding of yourself. Society put this pressure on me, and while I may have been moving forward, it wasn't until I took the time to reflect on the value of what I was doing that I'd realized I'd been lost all along. Only with reflection was I truly able to make and take responsibility for my own decisions. I believe in reflection. I believe reflection can promote change, not only in yourself, but in the systems of the world. I chose too quickly a path from high school to college. I didn't reflect on my true values and the niche I wanted to fill in life. But taking that year after college, reflecting, and realizing where I needed to be makes me feel okay this time that I'm unsure. I'm unsure because I'm inexperienced, but I'm confident that as I gain experience, that'll change. But maybe, as a society, instead of asking, what's next, let's ask, what interests you, and help start that reflection process for others. Thank you.
I'm so grateful to our speakers this morning, and delighted to say that we will continue this conversation after the service in the Bacon Room with a sermon talkback. So hope to see many of you there, and of course, if you have something you believe in, we'd love to hear from that as well. Also very grateful to Dean Groves. It's been so wonderful to have his music this morning, and we still have more, which is wonderful. Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere, its temple, all space, its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all truth, its ritual, works of love, its profession of faith, divine living.
I almost forgot this. Well, lastly and most importantly, I believe in love. I believe love is the most powerful force in the universe. I might not say all you need is love, but if you don't have love, it doesn't matter what else you got. So this is a song about love and calculus, if you can believe that. The love part is obvious. You have to sort of read between the lines for the science part. It's called Theory of Limits. Meet my love, something unseen passes between us as in a dream. Then boundaries melt away like mist in the sun. Our souls flow together, and we are one. Something is born, my love. It grows from our hearts, a whole so much greater than all of its parts. our love travels outwards, a sphere of rebirth, as joy is the flowering of heaven on earth, approaching the infinite, approaching God, beauty outside of time, wonder and awe, the cycle of life and death is only a shallow breath, approaching the limitless, approaching love. Love is our harmony, our song has begun. We'll form a trinity as two become one. Then our love will never die. We shall be free. Even after we're gone, my love, in love we shall be, approaching the infinite, approaching God, beauty outside of time, wonder and awe, the cycle of life and death is only a shallow